Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Myth and Meaning, the show where your hosts on the left, Owl,
And your host on the right, Brock.
dissect the fictional pieces of media that we find to have meaning. And we do that through a lens of myth. Hence the name Myth and Meaning.
And archetypes.
It's true, we do also talk about archetypes. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about midnight callers.
Also known as Keep an Eye on the Dragon Balls.
Yes, and a new addition to this format I think we're going to start doing. Brock, go ahead and read us the episode summary before we begin.
Sure thing. So in this episode, Oolong remembers that he has a camper dino cap, so the three spend the night in it. Goku tells Oolong about the Dragon Balls, and then Oolong drugs the drinks of Goku and Bulma, causing them to fall asleep. Yamcha and Puar have been listening from outside the window and now plan to take the balls. Puar changes into Goku to lure Oolong, who transformed into Bulma, thinking she was Goku, out of the camper, and Yamcha sneaks inside. But what he thinks are the Dragon Balls, after uncovering the Dragon Balls, this is written weird, and finding out they were Bulma's breasts, Yamcha completely loses it and retreats with Puar, who flew away from Oolong after the shape-shifting pig and cat discovered each other's true identities from being Goku and Bulma. So
Puar is a cat, confirmed.
The imagery in this one is heavy. This is such a significant episode when you think about...
It's a cluster.
It's a cluster.
So, I chose this picture. This is from 12th Night, I believe. And it is because the shape-shifting nature of Puar and Oolong, which I wanted to talk about with this. So, we did not touch on it last episode because we were talking about what they mean for Bluma and Yamcha, and this is also related to that. We didn't mention it was. Did we mention it was a shape-shifting school? We just said school.
I think we just talked about how it was a school.
Right. So shape-shifting is obviously representative of the ability to change one's form in spirit and keep your spirit, let's say. And so if you notice in Oolong's episode, when he shifts form, his cowardice is still there. His spirit is intact. But the appearance is something that, and the illusion is something that, let's say, a simp would undergo. It's like the internet tough guy, right? Hidden behind a wall of anonymity. A lot of betas, right, will get aggressive like that.
It is the ability to misrepresent yourself to somebody else, right? It's all about that projecting of the supposed self-image.
And since they are projected, basically, and disintegrated, Puar and Oolong have that ability. It's actually a boon you receive from accepting that mode of being. And by boon, I mean it's a pathology. Like, it hurts you to do it. And if you notice, Oolong can't do it forever. Puar can. What do you think about that, Brock?
I think that is kind of... It's a way of saying that for Yamcha, he could, in stasis, remain in this state. And it would be very easy for him to slide into that being a permanent mode of being. It's sort of... One thing that I want to say is that points out the danger in that way of thinking, that you weaken yourself by staying there, and that projection can persist more than the projections coming from Bulma, you could say. I think part of that has to do with her being not female.
I think that's one. Yeah, I think that's one part of it, and then the other part would be maybe Toriyama's actually not even maybe Toriyama's basically saying that simps you'll be called out, you'll be exposed. For acting this way, let's say, and women can get away with acting this way without having to. And by what I mean by acting this way is deceiving their surroundings, I suppose.
Just the misrepresenting yourself.
There we go. Misrepresenting misrepresenting yourself is a good way to say it.
Because if you say a man is weak in spirit and misrepresenting himself, society will call him out, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a corrective state. But
well, he can get away with it, but it's only a matter of time until right. Whereas with women, they can shift and jive, and they can actually.
I mean, just think about the fact that women wear makeup.
Right, exactly.
That is a cultural thing that women represent themselves differently, and like that's okay, right? We know that is part of, that's just part of how women represent themselves, right?
Right, exactly. And this play is about a woman who dresses up as a man and causes another man to fall in love. Causes a woman to fall in love with her. It's complicated. It's Shakespeare. But it is that misrepresentation of oneself. It's kind of why I brought it up. But I like that phrase.
Yeah, I was, that's good. I was wondering how this was going to tie in with this image.
Yeah, and so it is that misrepresentation, and it kind of ties up at the end, where everyone's found out, which is what happens in a cluster. I mean, Midnight Callers.
Exactly.
I'm calling it a cluster from now on. All right. And so it's true. The camper, how we begin the episode, is the first thing we see. Oolong remembers the camper, and Bluma takes advantage. All that.
Yeah, I
spikes
like
their drink.
Well, we also should point out that it's in this episode that Bulma, she wants to rest and she wants a change of clothes, and so to stay in the camper has to wear the clothes given to her by Oolong.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that just a second.
But I think by looking at that, you can see what the camper is, right?
Well, for now, let's just say what the camper is. It's Oolong's protective, mobile and protective barrier against the outside world. It's as good as a simp could muster, let's say.
And also, I think of this as sort of like the bubble that Bulma is in mentally about. She's unconscious to certain aspects of what she needs to see in a man,
for sure.
And her relationship with masculinity. So she's in a bubble right now, and that bubble is being supported by the simp.
Right. This is the Patreon mobile, let's say.
Basically.
And so the clothes that Oolong has for her are these. So she's instantly, by adopting her mode of being, treating Oolong as a tool, accepting Oolong's simping, that's all morphed her into this icon of sexuality and promiscuity.
The promiscuity is definitely
and that's what she's adopted. She actually decided to wear this.
Right, she didn't have to. But
well, no, I mean, like, she decided by treating Oolong this way.
Right.
She could have kept her capsules. This never had to happen. She chose this path. This is still the aftermath of her giving Oolong the pill, the piggy pill. Pea pill?
I mean, this is part of that fallout now.
Exactly.
Because she doesn't have her capsules to lean on. She has to lean on his.
Yes. We also said there that I do want to mention Oolong's, let's say, desire for the feminine spirit is what he wants to wish for when Goku brings up the Dragon Balls.
Right, and so they have this conversation here about what Oolong would want from the Dragon Balls, because he explains what the Dragon Balls are to him. And Oolong says he wants to wish for 300 women, right? And that's what he thinks of women, right? And you can see him physically
scrunging.
Well, he's physically representing Bulma as also a prey animal. It's not only sexualized, but it's like the sexualization of the prey animal, of like the something to hunt down.
Yeah.
Right. something to be consumed, you could say. And we'll see that idea come right back up again whenever we get to Boss
We'll
Rabbit.
see we'll see the evolution of that.
Because this idea is important. They devote an entire episode to talking about what this really means.
Mm-hmm. And what happens when the pathology of the simp rules a society.
Right, when it's integrated as a cultural meme, you could say.
Yeah, but we'll get there. So she puts on this.
Well, I also, I just love that it's inside this bubble that Oolong is willing to say this as well. It's like, now that I'm here in your bubble, now I'm here in your way of thinking, right? What do you think is the wish, right? And then I think it's just representative of the camper being that it's like being in the Oolong brain.
Yeah. But also Yamcha is lurking about. Last episode we saw him, and Yamcha, being the immature masculine, is trying to find our heroes again, try and get revenge.
Right. And so he is outside the camper looking in and listening in on this conversation about what he would wish for. Because it's funny, Oolong says he would wish for 300 women. He wants a whole harem of women. And Goku's response to that is, would you really want 300 Bulmas? And that reminds Oolong of his actual relationship with the feminine, right?
It's like, you want to replicate that? It really?
Yeah, it's like you just want more of that, right? And that's the way of saying, like, your wish isn't to change yourself, right? Your wish isn't to be better, it's just to have.
And so in reaction, we see that Yamcha is not a wholly misguided character, because what is his wish?
His wish is to be better himself. Yamcha says that his wish would be to not be afraid of women anymore.
Specifically, that he would be able to talk with women.
Yeah.
Meaning, right?
His wish would be for him to overcome his fear of
for
women.
him to have, let's say, the opportunity everyone else does.
Mm-hmm.
Have the courage to do that. He thinks he lacks it. So, upon hearing that, he wishes for, or he
expresses
his wish for the ability to speak with women to Puar. After Puar, which is another interesting point, asks him if he wants world domination. The disintegrated female spirit would encourage whatever path, like that host, I guess. It's almost a parasitic thing.
It's just like
is on.
Just power, right? Like no contextual power, just in support of, giving the authority over you more power. Right?
Yeah. And Yamcha's actually not about that, and that's why he's the immature masculine and not actually a villain. He's more of an anti-hero right now.
Mm-hmm.
He is on a path.
Yeah, and it's a respectable path too, right? And it's definitely not something like Pilaf, because Yamcha is able to progress.
Well, this is his first step, really, that we've seen on that. And Goku is not having either of those wishes. He's like, I don't understand those wishes at all.
Well, he hasn't heard Yamcha's wish, but he is not into Oolong's wish.
Oh, I'm just saying how you pasted it into this.
Oh, yeah. It's funny that whenever I look up Dragon Ball Harem, I just get Yamcha. Almost ironic.
It is ironic, because now that's kind of the meme. That's all he's got going. Let's continue. Oh boy. And so, through Yamcha's wishing, he is brought to some enlightenment.
Right. He overhears about the Dragon Balls, and so decides that he's going to go to try to steal them from them, right? Still in that arrogance.
What we said in the synopsis, a complex web of actions. He eventually gets to Bluma alone, thinking that her breasts are the Dragon Balls.
It's great because, I think it ties a little bit into the situation that leads to this, right? Because Bulma is asleep and Goku's asleep for this to be able to happen in the first place, because of Oolong knocking them unconscious, right? Pushing them into the unconscious. So it's kind of like pushing pause for them so that we can segue into, again, Yamcha interactions while Bulma is unconscious.
Right. As I said, she has to
Mm-hmm.
be unconscious.
Yep.
And so, as you can see, Yamcha's eyes are open here. Since he's on the right path now, he is able to see kind of some of the reward, let's say, by following his self-improvement that he's trying to do.
Right. In this state, it's sort of the kicking him in the ass whenever he's thinking in the Medusa state, and he needs to be more at the self-improvement state. So confronting what you fear will make you able to get past that and to progress.
Right, and that's
Even if it
he
is
confronts
involuntary.
it. It's involuntary here, and he confronts it. But it is, and Toriyama, since he's writing the path here, is indicating that exact sentiment, that even if you are on the path, you confront something that you're afraid of, it'll make you stronger for it. And this absolutely is part of the reason why Yamcha is able to do what he does at the end of the season.
Right, and that's why this is immediately following him expressing that as his wish, and then goes to get his wish, and this is his wish, right? He just doesn't understand it yet.
Right. And meanwhile, another part of the cluster is the homies that are there on Pilaf's orders. Now, I put these other pictures of inept henchmen because that idea of having those inept modes of being that are malevolent and serve a higher malevolent spirit, there's a reason why they fail so often, and it typically is because the pathology that leads the malevolent spirit they serve is also inept in a way. So here we have Pilaf's henchmen who are unable to recognize their own bomb. So they're trying to bomb is that in the synopsis at all? Did they mention Shu and Mai?
I don't even think so.
I don't think they did. Okay, so
that's how much of a cluster this is.
It's a huge cluster. So this is Pilaf's both disintegrated, his masculine and his feminine.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't shapeshifters because Pilaf has actually somewhat matured his female disintegrated spirit, and his male disintegrated spirit is deception. He is deceptive. He's a ninja after all, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually stayed, and they're both still a little deceptive, but they're not shapeshifters. But in this instance, they plant the bomb, and they stand inside, or they go into the camper, which is now blown up. We'll get to that in a second. And then it explodes. And I just wanted to mention it shows Pilaf's ineptitude to tell his own malevolence and have his own malevolence from turning on him without his direct interaction. The other reason is these inept malevolent spirits are sent out without direct guidance from the malevolent spirit that guides them. Pilaf's not there to do enforce his actual will. That's the reason why it turns against him.
Right. You could say that if Pilaf came here, right, it would have turned out differently. But because this is basically a lot of these characters act as mirrors so that we can talk about the ideas that are sort of front and center, right? And you can look at the immature feminine and masculine, or not immature, but unintegrated nature of them and their reaction to the situation of the camper as, a commentary of how poor Pilaf's mode of being and understanding of this situation is, right?
Right. And additionally, it is Pilaf's attempt to destroy the simp bubble that you so dubbed
And
earlier.
he's so pathetic that he just destroys himself in the process. Not
Yeah,
himself, but
he harms
an extension
himself.
of himself.
Yeah, he harms himself in the process of doing that, specifically because he's shooting mine.
And,
So
and also just think of how small Pilaf is, how immature he is, right? He's very small.
Exactly.
When we're talking about that young aspect, right?
Yes. Every cradle. Yeah, just to briefly mention, Team Rocket's blasting off again. They get defeated in every single episode.
Yeah.
That's how inept they are. They're sent from Giovanni, who's like, actually a big deal. And if he's involved, things get done. But if it's to say, it is not the correct mode of being to send others to enact your will for you. And then in this one, Sleeping Beauty, which we keep bringing up, this orc searches every cradle for Aurora over the 16 years that she's growing up.
Amazing.
And they were sent out without Maleficent, and obviously Maleficent's smarter than that.
Right.
Now, let's talk about this Simp Mobile. We have a lot to talk about here.
Yeah. This is where the idea comes to, it all comes to a conclusion. The cluster all unites on one major thing, right? Which is, just to wrap up the night, there's a whole other aspect of the episode that is Puar and Oolong trying to represent themselves as Goku and Bulma, right? And they're poor representations. And that's just, it's it's funny, but it's also sort of you can say, if you try to be yourself through that mode of being, it's going to be a very low resolution and far inferior version of yourself. But so that is done. We get through the night. Oolong stays up all night protecting the simp bubble with a shotgun, and then
takes all his energy.
And then Yamcha comes after them, chasing after them with an RPG to finally pop that bubble.
And Blooma's awake.
And Blooma's awake at the time, not asleep.
And so the notion of a man with teeth that could be a potential partner for Blooma, but unattainable on the path that she's on, causes her bubble of simp protection to burst.
Right, she is finally made conscious of something. She's made aware of what Yamcha is and what he would represent to her.
Her thoughterry is stopped by the notion of a real man instead of a simp. Right. And so what we have here in the middle is that exact representation in fictional form in the film Shrek, which is an amazing film.
It's great.
And so in Shrek, we have a Pilaf type, a simp type.
Right, we have a sort of Pilaf-Oolong combination, right? You think about the authority that is wielded by Lord Farquaad.
Well, think about how Farquaad views women in the whole thing. He's just a simp.
Mm-hmm.
And so Fiona, who is on this path thinking she has to marry Farquaad, is on that path. She's not necessarily as bad as Blooma, let's say, but her awakening is caused by meeting a masculine spirit that's worth reining in and keeping as a partner, which is
the ogre.
The ogre, Shrek.
Exactly. And I think that there's also a representation of how, that Lord Farquaad as society views the way that Shrek is as an ogre.
Yes, and that's
why he's an ogre.
Right. His mode of being is seen as ogreish. Ogreish? Ogreish.
Oafish.
Right, and so specifically here, Blooma's knocked about and shown that exact idea. You cannot have this protection from simps when you know that is not how you should be treating the masculine in your life.
Right, and that goes down to the archetype of, the shared human experience. That the awakening ultimately is that to obtain your mythological story, that is a step for you. You need to reconcile that a man needs to be like this, and not the way that Lord Farquaad is, right? Which
Or
is
Oolong,
a domineering, impotent.
Sure. And Aurora is awakened by the union of her positive masculine and her dormant feminine spirits. Her masculine spirit, the Logos, awakening her,
Right.
enlightening her.
And her eyes are opened, right? You
Right.
think of how wide Yamcha's eyes were also.
Not
whenever he
necessarily.
saw Oma.
Not necessarily. Aurora was never treating men like that. So
Yeah.
we're not making that comparison. We are just making the comparison of the awakening here.
Right, the opening of the eyes, right?
Yes. And that actually brings us to the end of this episode. I did want to mention, though, since we've now talked about this, why I named this the second night. So the first night, if you remember, with Goku and Bluma, Goku discovers the discriminating ability to tell between masculine and feminine. Bluma discovers some of that as well, with the knowledge that not all men have tails, let's say. Sorry. And that the sustenance, spiritual sustenance, that cannot be gained by society, simply society, which is the eating that Bluma has, and then Goku going out and encountering the homies, which leads them on the path and allows them to walk with God. That's the first night. Just a summary of that.
Right.
Second night, here we see that same discriminating ability, but in a different way. We see the discriminating ability of wanting women and wanting to be able to what do I want to say? Earn a partner.
Envision earning a partner, right?
Yeah. The ability to better oneself to draw partners in, rather than saying, I want that, right? It's a partnership, a union. Being able to do that is that discriminating ability, and Yamcha discovers that is a good thing and leads him down the path of enlightenment. We also recognize the discriminating ability of, or let's say lack thereof, of Puar and Oolong in their shape-shifting, right? That change in form and keeping of the spirit is a new concept to the show, let's say. And so that's a new thing that they learn as well, which all leads them up to the ability to, and we're going to see this next episode, to not only get another Dragon Ball, but encounter society's ills at large.
Right, it's creating a roadmap for an approach to something bigger than just the individual, but towards up the hierarchy, right?
This is one up. So we went from the first night was a lower hierarchy. The second night is we're worried about that second domain, right? You've already learned the differences of male and female. Now, how do they interact? That's the second hierarchy we're going to see. And then we're going to see in our last one the self and that hierarchy, which is pretty high up there.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the third night. But we'll see that way later. So I think that's going to bring us right to the end.
Yeah, I think that's a good conclusion to that.
So if you liked what you heard, give us a subscription, please.
Give us a like click.
Please. Give us a kunga and a bunga.
Klunga the subskrunga bunga. If you lunga, the kontunga.
There we go. Well, all right. I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
And we'll see you, ladies and gentlemen, next time.